Hi, guys. Excited to be here today, and this has been a really inspirational program so far. I feel like I was taking a lot of notes, but then I missed out on some of that greatness when I had to go get mic'd up. So I'm Vanessa Jupe. I lead the digital products and services team for H&R Block. I've been there for all of a year now, but it's been a really fantastic experience so far. Prior to that, I was at USAA, and I led a digital team responsible for a lot of our investment services and experiences. And before that, I was at DirecTV in product management. So I've kind of had a long career in tech and product. I was joking with Rita before we got here that I kind of feel like we're the only non-designers at your conference, but hopefully that's okay. And one of the things that I'd love to ask you guys for your help with during maybe the lunch break or networking event later today, we're trying to figure out also how do we partner better with our design friends. So if you guys have history around how that has worked well for you, I'd love to hear about it. Yeah, so I'm excited to be here, and this is also somewhat of a love letter to Rita. She joined our team 3 months ago, but she's been with H&R Block for longer than that, and she's just been a fantastic asset to our team so far.
Well, thank you, Vanessa. I'm Rita Arens. I kind of started out in advertising and public relations. So I started out more as a writer and backed into product management when H&R Block first put their office product online, and it was so jargon-filled that nobody could understand how to use it. And so I was brought in under a usability consultant kind of guise when people didn't really have a definition for what that was. And so that's how I kind of learned taxes. And then in 2004, I started blogging and ended up leaving H&R Block and going into the world of blogging and social media influence marketing for about 10 years. And then we got bought by big New York media. Digital media started falling apart. I found myself back in corporate America, but really excited to use all of the stuff that I had learned about psychology and neuroscience and influence on taxes. So that's what we're here to talk about today, is kind of how you partner. We've heard a lot of stuff today about psychology, which is really exciting to me. That's something I'm really interested in, how we kind of partner that softer side of communication and psychology with the data-driven decision-making and tech stack. So
Awesome. So when you guys think about H&R Block, how many of you think about an online product or do-it-yourself tax? There are some hands. That's good. How many of you? Yeah, there are like 3 or 4. How many of you did not know that H&R Block had an online product where you could do your taxes yourself? Oh, there are more hands. That's somehow not surprising. Yeah, I actually didn't know that either a year ago when I got the call from them that they were looking for somebody to come lead the team. But in fact, it's been around for 20 years. And I'm sure a lot of us in this room who have worked at more traditional companies that have been around for a long time have some sort of struggle with the different channels, as apparently it's called. I started out in tech-driven companies, and we never talked about channels until I got to USAA, and then all of a sudden there was this big talk about channels and fear of cannibalization and all this stuff, and I was like, what is going on? That's really weird. But H&R Block is no different. We've been around close to 65 years now, and so there's a lot of friction between, we've had these 10,000 stores across the US and these 80,000 tax professionals that do a beautiful job serving our customers, and then there's this online team that's trying to take everything from the major brand, and that's clearly not the case. So I'm excited to be at the company at a time where things are really changing dramatically, and we're focusing more on that cross-platform experience that we can provide to our users. And so Rita, as you guys heard, she directs our platform strategy and our help strategy, and so much of that experience is about when you come into the digital channel, even if you want to do something yourself, you're not necessarily feeling confident all the time, especially when you're doing something like taxes or investments or other types of financial services. You kind of need human help sometimes, right? And that's something that we've started to lean a lot more into. So Rita, how do you think about the blend of human and digital, and is it important, and why?
Well, it is. And I'm sure financial services folks have kind of the same problem when you're thinking about 24/7 help. I'm sure your call centers aren't all staffed at all times during the day. So we've started introducing our help center and our chatbot and our search appliance. And one of the things we found in our user testing last year, we're like, oh, this is so great. We've put it all in one place. It's really easy to access. And what our user testing found was that people got into our help center and they saw a search appliance and they saw FAQs, and they saw a chatbot, and they saw an ad for a tax person to help them. They got completely overwhelmed and they didn't know how to use any of it. And so that was kind of a light bulb for me, that helping people understand what facet of help they need at what time is as important as providing that help. And so we started thinking about that in a little bit different way. And another thing that we learned last year, we had a new product called Ask a Tax Pro. So if you wanted an actual tax professional's help, you could pay a fee and talk to the person. And about halfway through the tax season, I went out to one of our offices out there and listened in on a bunch of calls and chats. And what I found was that people were reaching out to us, and our tax pros are so tax motivated and ethically upright. They always would be leaning into the exact tax answer to the question. But what people were really looking for was kind of like a therapy session, because last year we had tax reform that changed a lot of people's outcomes. And so they were calling in and they were asking questions about calculations, but what they were really asking was, okay, I was expecting to get this huge refund and now I have a zero balance or I owe money, and how can you help me feel good about this? Like, how can you help me feel comfortable that the program actually had the right outcome that I was looking for? And so we started talking to our tax pros about the difference between when you don't charge for a service, it's okay to have a really transactional experience. But when you are starting to charge for a financial experience, it's like you don't want to go to the doctor and say, you know, I just had my labs and it says my vitamin D is low. And they're like, yes, your vitamin D is low. Give me $100. Like, you want to understand what that means. And so we're starting to see the financial advice experience or the tax advice experience be more like a little bit of a therapy session. And that introduces a lot of the psychology stuff that we've talked about here today that was, I think it's new to H&R Block, and it's probably new to a lot of the financial services sector.
So you talked about the psychology side of things a little bit, and one of the things that's really cool about Rita and the way she thinks is she is a big learner, which is really something that we look for on our team. Those people that are going to be super curious and continue to learn. And she's read a lot about influence theory, and we've tested quite a few things from an A/B test and also just usability test perspective, focused on influence. So how do you think about that and how you apply it?
That was one thing I learned a lot about when I was in the world of social media. As I got into that space in 2004, I remember, you know, the day that I first saw Twitter and the day that I first saw Pinterest. And we started asking ourselves, can someone who's really good at influencing somebody through blogging be a pinner? Can a pinner be an Instagrammer? Can an Instagrammer be a YouTuber? And no. For some reason, those channels and those personalities don't always translate. And what I was finding was that people were kind of naturally finding their way to how to influence people, but I got interested into whether there was kind of science behind that, and I got into the work of Cialdini. And he was a social scientist. He is a social scientist, he's not dead. And he wanted to get out of the classroom, and so he studied what he called compliance professionals. So it was everything from like used car salesmen to preachers to, you know, anybody who's like trying to get you to believe a certain way. And he said, despite the thousands of tactics that he saw, they all fell into 6 major buckets. And so we started, prior to this role, I was in a content strategy role. And so we started working really closely with our design partners to back into 3 different influence theories for our messaging and then test those. And another thing that we found, and this is probably translatable to the rest of financial services, is that if people are in a heightened emotional state, if they're stressed out or they're worried, they're going to have a lot different reaction to your messaging than if they're calm. Mm-hmm. And at different times of the year, they'll have different messaging. I was talking to somebody who did student lending, and they were saying that there's a 4-month period that's really like their season too, which I didn't realize. So that was very interesting. But yeah, so testing people's reactions like inside and outside of your season, I think is really helpful as well. And I would love for you, Vanessa, to talk a little bit about data and how you feel about our team using data to make decisions, and when is it data good and when is it overkill, and how do you kind of separate that out?
Awesome. So I'll give an example from my life at USAA because it was really poignant to me. So you guys deal with product folks, and I'm sure quite a bit. And in the digital team at USAA, we were not the product folks. We actually were more of a service, just like design often is. And so we dealt with our product folks in the line of business, and we would always go to them and say, hey, here's a problem we want to solve. We would like some money. Help us with this. And they would always tell us, go just do this, right? Like, for example, we would have data that would show an abandonment rate when you're going through an application to open an investment account. And on this page, 50% of people bail out. It's terrible. We got to make it better. And our product folks would say, well, design it this way. This is why they're falling out. That's great. I think data is fantastic because it tells you what's happening, but it doesn't tell you why it's happening. And so often I think people just make assumptions about why something is a certain way. So rather than, okay, just go design the thing that we were told to design, what we ended up doing was getting a big co-design session, a 4-day-long session, with our product partners and a lot of folks in the business, marketing, IT, design, et cetera, and of course the digital team. And we had it's very basic, right? We had users go through the flow and talk about what they were seeing on that page and what they were feeling and why they were making the decisions they were making. And it was really eye-opening for everyone involved, but really particularly for our business folks, because the assumptions of why people were having issues were wrong, right? Like the designs that were recommended, had we made them, probably would not have made it any worse, but it probably wouldn't have made it any better either. And so I think data is critical, but it doesn't replace the human interaction that you need to really make a great experience. And then on the other side, something that we're looking at right now, which is really data oriented, is our machine learning technology that we're investing very heavily in. And so our big focus as a team is make the tax experience less painful. So how you do that is by making it easier, making it faster, but also making sure that it's super accurate and people know and feel like it's really accurate. So we're going to leverage machine learning as much as we can to check all those boxes and make sure that it's easier and faster for people, but we still want it to be slow enough, I guess, so people feel that confidence that they're doing the right thing and that it's still a valuable service.
Looks like we're going to questions. Okay.
Yes, and our first question is there a role in digital products to push to brick and mortar locations?
Yeah, absolutely. We do that quite a lot, actually. So we have, the very basic things, like you would imagine in Google Maps, you can look up any H&R Block location. We have products that are store finders that connect you also with tax pros. So you can go into an office if you want, or like Rita mentioned, if you have a question but you don't want to go into an office, which is what we're seeing more and more of, you can actually have a live chat with a tax pro. This year, you'll be able to see video in a pilot with some tax pros. So we're looking at different ways to blend those interaction methods.
And our next question is for Rita. How did you prepare and/or reward your tax pros for moving from a transactional mindset to a more engaging customer experience?
It was hard. One of the things, we're exploring actually a number of kind of behavioral economics solutions, as well as really just trying to get them to think differently about how they're interacting with people. They kept looking at it from their perspective. When I was talking to them, they'd say, well, I can offer this to the person, or I don't want to get on the phone because I can look things up easier if I'm chatting. And so really trying to get them to understand that I love you, tax pro, but I'm really more concerned about how the client feels about the interaction than about how you feel about the interaction, even though I love you so much. I want to explore, I want to test, I want you to pick up the phone just because I'm curious as to whether a human voice saying the exact same thing that you're chatting is going to have a difference in NPS or get that person closer to conversion just because they feel like they made a human connection. I personally I have a hypothesis that voice makes a difference. We've seen evidence of that in some of our user testing with some of our competitors, but that's a new thing, and we're doing some empathy training this year with all 80,000 of our tax pros as kind of a result of these findings that I think the whole industry is realizing that the psychology is actually a really important part of design and tech and product management, and we've kind of not paid a lot of attention to that.
And I'll add just quick 2 points. So after Rita went to visit with the tax pros last season, kind of mid-season, and did her training with them and everything, we did see a significant percentage increase in NPS based on what she did, so it did work. And then on the how is she rewarding the team, she's got a lot of things going on right now that we're going to try to pilot coming into the season. That's more point-based rewards and things like that. So I think we'll learn a lot this year.
And we have time for one last question. What is the role of the call center if digital can solve everything or most things?
There's a huge role for the call center because no matter what you do, people are always going to call. So I think it's less about trying to divert calls and more about trying to make sure that the right people are having the conversation. If people do feel compelled to call, people should contact the brand however they want to contact the brand. I mean, they should be able to walk into the office to talk to the brand. They should be able to, to reach out to us however they want. And so my job and our job is really just to study how do they want to interact with us and how are we making sure that we're educating our employees, no matter where they are, to be able to answer a wider variety of questions so that the consumer doesn't have to understand if I have a tax question or a tech question or brand question. We should just be able to answer and meet them wherever they are. Good?
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys.